To order. First, again, this is the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and School Committee for the purpose of writing a new statement of interest or a renewed statement of interest for Saugus High School. This group has been meeting regularly, and we did set a meeting schedule just so if anyone viewing or anyone that missed the last meeting can write it down. The drafting team that was put together will be meeting every Monday morning at 7 to go over the drafts. And this group, the large group, will meet every Monday evening at 6 p.m. here at the Roby in the school committee room where we have access to the smart board in use. Next, I want to ask the town manager if he wants to give us an update. We were waiting for a status on the reports.
Sure. Couple things before I get into the reports. I did ask Sergeant Van Steenberg and Deputy Newberry to come to tonight's meeting. I know there was some questions regarding some of the police and fire issues with the access to the building and whatnot, and I don't want to keep you, so maybe we can take that up. I'll give an update, and then maybe we can take that up, but I think that they want to do, we are working on getting a complete security assessment by a third-party outside agency, but there are some notable issues that the sergeant and the police department have identified, and I think it's just, as we talked about last week, important to get that kind of information out to the committee as well as the public so that there's more awareness and information regarding the status and the condition of the facilities, as well as the fire. Fire is one of the issues that the engineers are looking at with SMMA. They have fire engineers that are looking at that, so we were looking at having a third party do an assessment. We're sort of waiting to see when the report comes in, and that sort of dovetails into the update on the report. I did speak with Ed from, I think it's Fernet, from SMMA this morning, and they are gathering. He tells me that he thinks that we would be very pleased on the product and the information that's coming in, and that would be usable for the purposes that we want it for. He tells me that they are synthesizing the information, and he's looking at sending a draft report out tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. So that's an update with that. He's also, just to give an update, we talked about having an energy assessment done on the building, since that is one of our themes. I did have a conversation with SMMA, Ed, regarding, they do energy assessments. They're not a full, there's different levels, but they do that for the purposes of an SOI. He was explaining to me that they do a lot of work in Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, the energy assessment is actually required as part of the SOI submission, whereas Massachusetts, it's not, it's done after. But we did talk of the fact that the energy issues in that building, and he agreed, were very significant as far as the inefficiencies, and that he was going to look into whether, and get back to me tomorrow, whether they do that and they have their people do it. So that is something that we're looking at as an option, so that we could have that as an attachment and to work into our priorities. I did also have a meeting with, as I think most of you are aware, we have a MAPC grant, technical grant, and assisting us to the community to become a green community under the Department of, was it DOER, and one of the things that's involved in that is coming up with an energy savings plan to be able to cut our energy cost by 20% over the next 5 years. Part of that is an ongoing. I had a meeting today with National Grid, as well as a sponsor, third-party company that does the assessments. I think the EMC that works with National Grid on these type of commercial and facilities. And part of that, what they were talking about is that they were going to be doing assessments anyway that we're going to be having them do. And one of the things I asked is if there would be, and they do a much more technical, much more in-depth energy assessment, but one of the things he's looking at doing, and I think they're going to be able to fit it in, would be able to do the high school within the next week, maybe next week, Wednesday or Thursday, to go through and be able to come up with, I told him that, obviously, we would, if we do a renovation or And that will help put together the 20% plan that we have to. So I think that's promising, and then we would have more documentation on the energy issues at the high school. So that's where we are moving forward with those issues.
That's excellent. All of that would be very helpful. So I was going to jump into reading the priorities of, Mr. Hashem, do you want to go over just the list of priorities that we are
Sure.
writing on?
Yeah, we're writing on out of the 8 priorities that we could have chosen from, we're actually selected 5 that we have checked off as indicators that need to be addressed. Priority number 1, the replacement or renovation of a building which is structurally unsound or otherwise seriously jeopardizing the health and safety of school children where no alternative exists. We're also going with number 3, prevention of the loss of accreditation as determined in the judgment of an authority, which in this case would be NEASC. Number 4, prevention of severe overcrowding expected to result from increased enrollments, which must be substantiated and as determined in judgment by the authority. Number 5 is replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facilities such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation system to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in the school facility. And number 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete building in order to provide a full range of programs consistent with the state and approved local requirements. So basically, the 5 checks and priorities that we've chosen would be, just to give a quick recap in layman's terms, priority 1 deals with health and safety concerns. Priority 3 deals with the loss of an accreditation or potential loss of accreditation. 4 deals with overcrowding issues or potential for overcrowding issues. 5 deals with energy inefficiencies and energy costs. And 7 deals with instructional concerns and program concerns that are not possible with the current status of a building. So those are the 5 priorities we've chosen to address.
Thank you, Mr. Hashem. Last meeting, we did do a first reading and amendments to the general description of the building. But before we get into that, I want to ask the officers present, Sergeant Van Steensberger, Deputy Chief Newberry, do you want to speak now on issues that have come up before your department with this building, or do you want to participate through the presentation?
I'll participate. We can participate throughout the presentation. It's fine. If there's
Excellent.
any specific questions, you can refer it to us.
Thank you.
Chairman.
I have a meeting at 7:30, though. We're going to get, just to let you know, if we get close to that, I probably want 15 minutes.
Yeah, what I'm saying is it might be helpful if they sort of give sort of a synopsis of what you think some of the initial issues are without, having completed a full assessment, sort of to give a flavor of what we're dealing with.
Historically, what problems they've
Yeah,
encountered.
and I
with
think
the
access
building.
to the building and the egresses, and I think
Certainly.
each one of them has substantial issues that I think
Deputy
that we
Newberry,
are
did you
aware of.
want to
That way, if they run out of time.
speak of that now?
Yeah, why don't I go on that before, because if we get towards, I'll stick around for a while if there's questions, and I have, like I said, a second meeting at 7:30, so I don't want to roll into that.
Obviously not as important as this meeting.
No, this is foremost of my day, correct. I've given a little information to everyone here that are writing reports about the building, but historically, I think there was a 5-year span where we did about 200 false alarms, so we're getting into a point where, the fire alarm system is getting antiquated up there. I'll go on to the fire alarm systems and protection first, then we'll do the layout of the building, if that helps out. So, like I said, we did about 200 false alarms. We do a good job, helping out with building department and the like to, keep these things together. I mean, the fire alarm system itself is held together with fuses, which, and nowadays is, everything's circuit boards or computer systems and backups and this and that. Well, you don't have that pleasure up there. And, we worked on and off and on and off trying to come to solutions, and we're just chasing problems up there. You don't know if there's a short in a wire or a detector somewhere, and it's really not an addressable panel that says, this is the thing that's broken, come over here, you know what I mean? So we're at the point now where if we look at the veteran school, or if we look at the now Belmonte Middle School, those are sort of the Cadillacs of the school system here when it comes to fire prevention, you know. And what you got up at the high school is not some cookie-cutter building like the Belmonte Middle School. The Belmonte Middle School is a, 3-story rectangle building. Everything sort of stacks on top of each other. It's sort of easy to update it. But when you talk about ease, we're still talking about money, and I think we were into the sprinkler system for more than $1 million up there. I think we're in the fire alarm system for half of that price. And then on top of that, we're talking, horn strobes in each space. You're talking about CO detection that we have been thinking about in the past. And then you're talking about emergency lightings, exit signage, and all these things that are interconnected to generators and stuff. We're talking several $1 million from a health and safety standpoint, just into what I'd be looking for on a remodel, you know what I mean? So we're at the point now where we've gotten a quote in the past for a fire alarm system, but just to replace the panel, it was $15,000, and we sort of,
Or 25?
yeah, maybe even closer to 25, depending on just a panel, not a change out of detection and stuff like that, on top of all the lighting and things that we'd want from a fire protection standpoint. So if you look at it from that standpoint, what are we doing, what are we gaining for $15,000 to $25,000? Just a panel? Because now we're looking at the wiring. You can't just piggyback old wiring and start putting devices around, or pigtail wiring up in the ceiling. What you have to do is rewire the entire building. And then when you're coming into a substantial renovation of a building that size, 7,500 square feet kicks into a sprinkler system, and there's no way to avoid a sprinkler system there. So just to put a system in like that, I mean, it takes more than a smile and a handshake, and so what we're looking at from that standpoint is what we'd look for on the other side of a renovation is a Class A fire alarm system and all the protective devices that we're talking about. In regards to access, the footprint, and I looked at it on Google Earth and wrote a little, synopsis of what's going on there, is we only have access to one side of the building for our fire apparatus. So if you put a building like Walmart up on the highway like we see out there now, we take a template and we put a little template on the property, and we make sure we can swing our largest vehicles around the whole property before we can even entertain putting that building there. So before a building's even approved through inspectional services, the plans come to us and we say, okay, as a fire department, this works. Now we'll deal with the minutia of going through a building process. So in regards to the way that the building is situated, we can't swing our largest apparatus around where the existing industrial arts plan is. Yeah, as you can see down there, on the far end of the building to the right-hand side of that picture, we can't swing our largest piece around there, and never mind get around to the WD wing. So according to the NFPA codes, you need to be able to get your largest piece of apparatus within 150 feet of any point in this building. So when we're looking at that back side of that building, I mean, you're talking about what? At least half of the students are all back there in that area. So from a fire protection standpoint, you're not just going to be able to throw pavement down and say, all right, now we're protecting these people. The footprint of that building with existing structures is prohibitive to that. So that's what we're looking for in that regards. Never mind every year when I write a summary the past 3 years of, the existing hardware on doors and the like and all these other things that we're dealing with, exit systems and stuff like that. All of that is antiquated. So when you're looking at a renovation there, we're not going to be able to place apparatus correctly, and never mind the millions of dollars into, the systems that we need, or what we'd require in a new structure.
All the exit signs, extinguishers, those are all up to date in the building.
We do a great job from that standpoint. Is what we're doing is, working with the building department every summer. I'll go out the past 3 years about August, and they probably wish I did it in July, but, the custodians are cleaning the building and the like, and we make sure all the exit signage and whatever systems that are in place work. But we can't require new devices and things like that on an existing building until there's some substantial renovations. But in regards to what's in the building, it works correctly. But every door up there has got the old, well, except for a couple that Ralph's replaced, antiquated push hardware that you'd never have in a new building and things like that. And so, yeah, the building department does a good job, and the school department, of keeping going what's there, but it is antiquated.
Well, you're considering also it's a 60-year-old building.
Thank you. Sergeant, did you want to?
Yeah, in terms of the police department, the primary concern is access to the entire building. And as it's set up right now, you have a whole side of the building, the one that's along Route 1, that we have very limited access to. As it is now, we can get our police cruisers and vehicles up behind the high school, but it's tight, and it gets very difficult to access the rear of that building, especially in the winter months with the inclement weather. And sometimes you get up there and try to turn around just to get back out. It's really difficult. You know, the other thing is you're only going to get one or two vehicles back there at a time. The other part of that is we look at like egress if there's some type of emergency, and where are the occupants of the vehicle of the building going to go, and you kind of get trapped up behind the school there. There's that little access pathway that walks down to the side street to Vine. But other than that, you have the whole majority of the building, a bunch of fire exit doors and stuff, and there's really nowhere to put them. You'd have to walk around the whole building to get out to the front. So I mean that would be our primary concern, is just access to the entire building, being able to keep an eye on the whole thing. I mean, like the Belmonte Middle School is excellent. You can physically drive around the entire school. You can, on a nightly basis, daily basis, examine the entire school and do a thorough search of it. You're very limited at the high school where you are. And if there's any type of major emergency that happens there and you want to start deploying manpower to cover exits and things like that, it's for one, you're going through a danger area just to set up a perimeter on the school, and then having to evacuate people out of there. It gets to be a near impossible task. So that would be our primary concerns.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
Just one, I think, interesting fact that come up. I think it might have come up at the last meeting, but I think, I don't know if you guys have received that information, but it was interesting to note that from one point of the school to the other point of the school was what, a quarter mile?
It's a quarter of a mile. If you go from the end of the Burns Gym, which on the picture, I'll show you. If you walked from the corner of the Burns Gym down here, and you follow the path of the building to the top floor of the WD wing, WD 29, it's 0.44 miles, that building. We got over almost a half a mile. I think, between the sprawled out structure of the building, the fact that at latest count there's 43 doors to the exterior on that building, you're absolutely right. There'd be no way to secure that building in an emergency.
Right.
Whereas like you mentioned the Belmonte and the, in the 3-floor design, I mean, I think there's probably possibly a dozen doors at the Belmonte total, So, I mean, it's a huge difference in the amount of entrances and egresses to a building, so.
And not only, the Belmonte is a rectangular building, you can cover it with, potentially 4 individuals at each corners to keep a visual.
We've said when we looked at this building, and then went on to Google Earth, and we've pulled pictures of the Belmonte, literally the footprint of the Belmonte academic area fits completely in
I'll stand up and do
where the WD and the East Wing.
Fits right in this space right here.
Wow.
The entire academic wing of the Vermont
Yeah.
fits right there.
And if you look at the square footage, although we still have some research to do on the exact square footage of the high school, they're pretty similar sized buildings within, 25,000 square feet of one another. So I mean, they're not like it's a huge discrepancy not to have this much land use for this building.
The other point I'd like to, bring up that I think it's pretty obvious, especially from the overview, is you look at all these kind of like dead areas in between, like courtyards and stuff, and to my knowledge, there's no exterior surveillance at the high school. So, I mean, there's just so much of the exterior, especially in the back, that you can't view it, there's no access to it, and it's very difficult. Like as a patrol standpoint, I mean, you could let's say you were searching the back of that building, for a suspicious person or for suspicious activity, I mean, you could drive right by and miss it. There's so many nooks and crannies that can hide up in there, and you have no exterior surveillance footage to kind of pinpoint where you're at. If something happens, and you know there's an emergency, you have to get someone out. You could literally find yourself trying to search back there for something, and just as the time's just ticking away. So.
What's interesting is you can't come all the way around the building. Once you get behind, you have to turn around and come back.
Right, and especially
same way.
some of those areas are so thin that you could only fit one car in at a time. You'd have to, you get, one patrol. Forget about the fire truck and the ambulance coming in. How wide they are, they can't even access half of it.
And I think it's worth noting that as it's currently situated on the property, there's no way to rectify that either, because you have a major, to the south side of the building here, on the bottom of the picture, you have the plaza, and then you have, obviously, all up the west side of the building, you have Route 1, which neither one of those are going anywhere. They're not like, you're not like saying, well, we could widen all of this and expand around. And you have Chute Brook behind, on the east side. So you have the brook, you have a major retail space on one side, and then you have obviously a major highway on the other. So three sides of it, there isn't even an option to expand.
Right, unless you're going to just remove structures. Like, there's no way.
The only option to expand is where there's,
Houses on the north side.
well, no problem accessing.
Right. You can get there.
I mean, we can expand in the front, but that's not the access problem.
Right.
I have a question for Mike. Mike, false alarms you mentioned, what year were those?
I think over the last 5 years. I did a report last year on it because we were starting to get to a point where we had to get ahead of it, and I can get that for you.
And was that resolved with some improvements or fixes to the fire alarm system?
Yeah, some patchwork and stuff like that. We have a private vendor that's been taking care of the fire alarm systems in the town buildings. We've gotten ahead of that in a bit, and help with inspectional services and stuff like that. We've gotten a little bit ahead of it.
And to Mike, how many false alarms have you had this year?
We've had 2, I think, that are completely false alarms, don't know why they were caused, and there were another 2 pulls.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the system worked. It was a false alarm in the sense that there was no fire.
So 2 mystery false alarms?
2 mystery false alarms, I believe.
And that cuts into time and learning?
Absolutely. But it should be noted that the 2 that were pulled, even though they weren't supposed to be pulled, the fire alarm did work. Both cases, so.
Yeah, and I think that I believe that the false alarms that we were getting, that large amount back in the last couple of years, had to do with, we did some upgrades within the building to the fire alarm system, and then
Right.
the
Sensors.
devices weren't adaptable to the new system, and so that then they had to do some modifications and upgrades to some of the devices. So there was quite a bit of havoc that was going on for quite a while.
Sure, and one of the pulls, the false alarm that we had at the front of the building,
Well, we couldn't,
that led to a full day of work with the vendor and stuff like that to try to, marry that to the device. And we even discussed taking the device out if we had to, so it's getting to that point. And again, you can't pigtail wires in the walls. You can't just go in and use a wing nut and screw a new wire in there. You gotta really dig in and marry a device back to the panel. Like the manager said, a lot of it's not compatible anymore.
Thank you. Mike, the current fire alarm system is based on heat sensing,
Heat detection.
and in Class A, we would have the advantage of smoke detectors as well as heat
Smoke and CO. Mm-hmm.
and carbon monoxide.
Yeah, we'd require that.
So there are no smoke detectors in that building now?
There may be a few. I don't know. I think we've patched a few CO detectors in
yeah, I'm not sure.
some of the schools, but I think it's all heat detection up there.
Okay.
And it's not a lot of it either. You're going off the code from, nearly 60 years ago, and that's the devices that are there. You're not coming in and putting a detector in each room and having CO in each level and things like that back towards the boiler and the like. There's a lot of room for improvement there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other argument, I guess, for a new structure rather than a renovation is that, part of it, I think we see this sort of at the Belmonte to some extent, is that you want to make sure that you have things hooked into the generators, and you also want to make sure you have emergency lighting that's hardwired for access and whatnot in all the locations within the facility.
Oh, sure. I mean, I
That's
had,
difficult to do with a renovation.
yeah, I mean, we probably did, myself and Captain Kaminsky, we probably did 100 visits to the junior high, solving those problems as the time went on, and it was, a lot of add-ons and a lot of takeaways because of that. I think the overall improvements may have dropped a few things because of how expensive the trades are and the like. We really had to marry a lot of things to the generators and the pumps and everything like that. So, we did a lot with as much as we could with the money that was there.
Are there any other questions for? So would you like to, at this time, like I said, the last meeting, we did read the description of the project or the property and the building at last meeting. Do we want to go over that again as it's been amended? Yes? No? Or would you like to go on to the next priorities?
We haven't read the general building description. I thought we would,
I thought we did that last.
we read the history.
Not
I
Edison.
thought we agreed today that we were gonna have an advanced reading of that section, and then an initial reading
Of the history?
of the priorities, that the priorities are, I see he has some tabs up there, but this is the one that is substantially, well, I don't know if I'd say substantially complete, but the furthest along, Mike, Frank?
Yeah.
And-
No, that was my understanding. We were going to read this to the panel, to the group, but we were going to read it together so that we would have an opportunity to kind of see where the first, this is the first piece of the submission. Then we go into the individual priorities after that. And for the individual priorities, we were going to hand out where we stood for an initial reading. I have handouts for priorities 1, 3, and 7. 4 we're still working on, and 5 we're still waiting on the report, because we figured the energy efficiency portion would require the most details from the report we're going to get back from SMMA.
Yeah, this was gonna be an advanced reading where you all would have, not voted to approve it, but it's substantially along, except for core educational, programs and operations, core educational spaces, and capacity utilization, and finally, capital and any improvements that have been made. So it's like the last 3 pieces, maintenance and capital repair. But a lot of the things that Mike has pointed out have been woven in here. What Sergeant Van Steensberg has mentioned can be easily brought in at the appropriate section. But the idea was to have you folks be the sounding board for the detail that we feel is mostly complete, and then the overview of the priorities to follow, and mark those up so that you have a stake in all of that and a role of sorts.
Madam Chairman, I think just as a qualifier that, obviously, when we get the draft report is produced either tomorrow or Wednesday, there could be some significant
Absolutely.
changes within
Yeah.
all of this based on that information. But, I mean, I think this is, the writing team has done a great job at trying to get ahead of it and understand it and really, project the themes that we're looking at with the sprawling building and the inefficiencies there and
Yeah,
difficulty.
the 3 themes are accessibility, obsolescence, and sprawl.
So would you like to start?
Sure. I can read this.
Thank you.
Starts off the brief building history. They wanted a detailed description of when the original building, etc. So we start off, and it says, in 1954, exactly 60 years ago, the people of Saugus began the process of constructing a new, and we're still determining, square footage of Saugus High School to replace the existing structures dated back to 1908. My little stand for tonight is going to be that I just did the math real quickly, and I found it really interesting that we were looking for a brand-new high school in 1954, 46 years after the first high school in Saugus was built in 1908, and yet here we sit 60 years later. Obviously, that 50-year plan, we're 10 years beyond the life expectancy of what we expected probably when we built this structure in 1954. Community planners boasted about new efficiencies. The new $2.2 million brick veneer school would shave costs by 15% by constructing a mostly single-story, quote, slab-on-grade structure utilizing cost-efficient spread footings. Planners also touted provisions made for natural lighting, consisting of large panels of wood-framed, non-insulated glass windows inserted into non-insulated walls connected by corridors that rely on recessed skylights that have long since provided adequate lighting. The town owned the expansive 21.74-acre site, which allowed for adoption of design and construction techniques that were being utilized to accommodate the post-World War II housing boom. Although the building has now exceeded its 50-year projected life by a decade, the structural base, envelope, and additions added in 1960 to be determined, and 73 square feet to be determined, has resulted in a sprawling maze-like horizontal edifice. The original building was designed off a main central corridor with two classrooms, science wings, the east and west wings, a gymnasium, the tower's gym, and a library on one side, and on the other, the auditorium, cafeteria, core classrooms, and administrative offices. Because new construction must always be horizontal with appropriate, quote, expansion joints, the lateral footprint of Saugus High School has consumed badly needed field as well as open space. The design and layout are incredibly inefficient, expending excessive amounts of heat and electricity to achieve its mission. Time to travel from one end of the building, 0.22 miles from new gym to WD 29, and the other is excessive, as is the 0.11 mile round trip from the A wing to the one functional student bathroom in the C corridor. These sprawling distances and the time needed to travel them impacts efforts to increase time on learning. A second phase of construction was done in the early 60s and consisted of a number of small additions to the existing school complex. A two-story classroom and link structure was added to the south side of the original classroom wings. This addition again utilized spread footings, a slab-on-grade first floor, and open web steel joist with concrete on steel form deck for the second floor, and open web joist and steel roof deck at the roof. The frame is supported on steel columns with masonry infill walls and masonry veneer at the exterior. This phase of the construction also included single-story additions for a shop and home economics classroom on the east side of the original shop areas. Foundations again consist of spread footings with slab-on-grade first floors. The roofs and frames with steel beams with precast concrete planks supported on steel columns and masonry walls. The last addition to this second phase was a multi-purpose room at the west end of the original building. This area has open web steel joist and steel roof deck, roof framing bearing on masonry walls. The foundation and first floor is similar to the other additions. In 1973, the final set of additions was completed. A large two-story classroom addition was added to the east end of the original building's classroom wing. The construction for this area continued to use spread footings and slab-on-grade at the first floor. Steel beams and open
Should be
web steel joists with concrete slabs the second floor and steel beams and steel joists with steel roof deck at the roof. The steel frame is supported on steel columns with masonry infill walls and has a masonry veneer. This phase of construction also included the addition of a new single-story gym and locker facility to the north of the multi-purpose room. Construction is similar to the classroom additions. 3 other infill additions were also constructed at this time. A small single-story library addition located between the original classroom wings, a small single-story addition between the shops, and a single-story addition to the north of the original cafeteria to enlarge the kitchen and cafeteria areas. Construction for these areas is similar to the above, except the cafeteria kitchen addition has steel and concrete framed floor with a crawl space underneath. The 1954 design, along with the 1960 and 1973 additions, are incapable of supporting specialized as well as differentiated learning environments. The totality of all three construction phases, having occurred 18 or more years prior to the enactment of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, are especially harsh and unnecessarily punitive to students and adults with physical and sensory handicaps who should be able to access all parts of the building without barriers and obstacles. This structure, as well as its mechanical, electrical, ventilation, and fire security system, is now well beyond what any reasonable trained observer would characterize as useful life. Indeed, the 2011 NEASC accreditation report cited Saugus High School as outdated, unsafe, and unable to meet the needs of 21st century learners. The current square footage is listed at 193,200 square feet, and then we'll go into that. We still need to find that.
I did ask that question of SMMA. I
And-
emailed them today, so.
Okay. The current 21.74 acre site is accessed by traveling on streets that are residential but is bordered on the west side by Route 1. Its locus is convenient to most parts of Saugus and allows for at least 3 pedestrian access points and 2 vehicular access points. Part of the original construction included a fence that would separate the once sparsely traveled road with the high school grounds. In 2010, Saugus Town Meeting appropriated $80,000 to replace a dilapidated wooden and chain link fence that separated the school from the busy, noisy highway. A new 8-foot composite fence, approximately 1,300 feet in length, with sound deadening capability was constructed in its place. One feature of this composite fence system is the ability to remove and relocate it onto an existing site or to another location. The south side borders a retail commercial use. To the east there is a brook and adjacent wetlands. A portion of the southern end of the property now borders the new flood insurance rate map firm, developed by Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, in June of 2013, and will become effective in 2014. Although there is a pedestrian access to this end of the building via a narrow footbridge over a brook that connects to Davis Court, it is not possible to have vehicular access of any type without constructing bridge structures in the wetlands area. To the north lies the main parking lot with 243 spaces, a secondary parking lot with 42 parking spaces, a softball field, and practice fields. There's actually two softball fields. The sprawling campus-style layout of the existing structure, along with the 2 horizontal additions, have resulted in inefficient use of the site for sporting events. The fields are in fair condition, and other than girls varsity softball, are only capable of facilitating team practice. All fields are in need of renovation, including drainage and irrigation systems. The fields are not level, pot-marked, have rocks close to the surface, causing grass to prematurely burn roots. Acreage that could be used for varsity sports is currently dedicated to horizontal building structure and parking lot space originally designed to accommodate a larger student population. The current configuration of the building resulting from 1960 and 1973 additions inhibit emergency vehicle access around the entire building perimeter. These narrow access roads are further limited by building additions that are pronounced protrusions with barely any setback from the pathway of travel. All of this limits public safety vehicles from having timely and safe response to remote areas of the building. The current structure is not conducive toward future expansion and/or renovation, and its expansive footprint is problematic now in regard to fire apparatus access. In fact, there is only one side of the structure available for fire apparatus. The turning radius at the industrial arts area and also at the southern corner of the WD wing does not allow for Saugus Fire Department's largest apparatus to access the 3 remote sides of the building. The areas that fire apparatus do have access to include the east wing, west wing, A wing, multipurpose room, and the 2-level WD wing. Do not have access to, I apologize. These areas are, as situated on the current site, also prohibit Type 1 fire apparatus, fire engines, and aerial ladder trucks from access. The roadway is also problematic for modern, fully equipped fire apparatus that are designed to operate on paved road surfaces that is 20 feet wide, which does not exist nor can exist on the site due to the way the building has been built out. NFPA 1, the fire code, addresses the access road requirements. NFPA 1 requires that a minimum 20-foot wide road reach within 150 feet of all portions of the exterior wall of the first story of the building, measured in an approved route around the exterior and approved by the head of the fire department. Saugus High School does not meet these stringent codes requirements and is currently configured on the site. These limitations, coupled with the lack of sprinklers and modern reliable fire alarm system, must be considered when evaluating the overall safety of the building. Topographically, the site is mostly flat and rises to the north where the fields are. Although slight in elevation, this area's topographical rise has been deemed significant enough to constitute as barriers for persons with disabilities who wish to access the fields from the lower campus. The lowest area of the site are on the southerly end near the area designated by FEMA. The 1960 addition, known as the A-Wing, has its lower 4 classrooms below grade and has experienced severe flooding in the recent past. If we can possibly pause here for a moment, does anyone have any feedback to this point?
Instead of.
Well, the only reason I'm saying it pause is because I
takeaways?
just...
What are you left with? What rings out to you as you heard all of that? What's being emphasized in your thoughts?
Well, handicapped people, disabilities, in an emergency, you gotta think, you gotta move these people, and, that's something that we have to think about.
happens back there.
The emergency. So you're thinking, as a parent, you're
As a
saying.
parent, yeah.
The fact that there's no access
There's
around
no
the entire
access
back.
back there, even for an ambulance. If I'm thinking myself, if something happens on the WD wing back there, how long is it gonna take for someone to get back there to them? A teacher, an adult?
The
No
first thing that
refuge
came to
areas.
me was, we've been very lucky.
Yes.
There
We
are no
have been
refuge
very
areas.
lucky.
Yeah, there's no refuge areas for people with disabilities and the like,
I mean, I think the other part of it is that people that may not have known is that there's been so many small expansions along the way. It's quite remarkable. I mean, some people that may not realize that there's, the library was added on. There's a whole bunch of different places that there was expansions throughout the years.
And yet, the only option available is to renovate in place. You can't go up. You either have to rebuild these existing expansive areas that will never solve the problems of access that we're aware of. So you're sort of stuck here. And then, plus the cost of retrofitting the piping and the alarms and so forth.
I think the cost will be higher here because of the sprawl of the building.
Right.
You're not talking like we talked about with the junior high school, everything's stacked on top of each other. You drill a hole through the floor and bring the pipes up, you're protecting the whole area. There's a lot of sprawl here.
I mean, I've worked in high schools for over 20 years and coached and visited a lot of high schools, been on a lot of campuses. That's the only view, and that's what's going through my mind now, is I'm trying to think of a like school like that where you can't drive all the way around at all times in the year and things like that. I can't think of one. I can't think of another one that I visited. Probably 50, 100 schools. I can't think of any of them.
And yet, this is, hopefully will be communicated to the state evaluators when they look at this and decide whether they're going to invite us to participate in the program.
Continue. The existing Saugus High School building complex is comprised of a number of different structures built at different times and linked together as detailed below. The original school, built in 1953, consists of a cafeteria, auditorium, and shop area, classroom wings, and a gymnasium, locker room, and administration area. Single-story structure is generally founded on spread footings and has slab on grade first floor except for the gym, which is a crawl space, and the floor is framed with steel girders and wood joist. There is little or no insulation. Although this type of construction proved economical in 1954, it does not allow for vertical renovation and/or expansion. Subsequent horizontal expansion in 60 and 73 have resulted in a sprawling, inefficient facility. The windows are all single glazed awning and plexiglass infilled panels. The original 1953 building has all painted wood frames, but the majority of the additions are metal. This type of window system is not desirable based on the wear of the plexiglass and the poor insulation value of the glazing. All are in poor shape and should be replaced. Original glazing putty may include PCBs and require abatement. The wood frames in the multi-purpose room has experienced extensive damage and rot, causing interior wall and floor damage. The majority of the exterior doors are hollow metal and are in poor condition. One door at the Burns Gym shows excessive abuse and should be replaced. The roof structure is primarily steel beams and girders, gypsum planks supported on steel columns. The gym roof has a curved tied arch of structural steel with gypsum plank. The structure is mulled with masonry walls, which serve as lateral support for the steel frame. The exterior veneer is exposed masonry. The second phase of construction was done in the early 60s, consisted of a number of small additions to the original school complex. A two-story classroom and link structure known as the A-wing was added to the south side of the original classroom wings. This addition has spread footings, a slab on grade first floor, and is actually lower than the surrounding grounds. An open web steel joist with concrete on steel form deck, the second floor, an open web joist and steel roof deck at the roof. The frame is supported on steel columns with masonry infill walls and masonry veneer at the exterior. This phase of construction also included single-story additions for a shop and home economics classroom off on the east end of the original shop area. Can I ask a question? Why are we, this seems very repetitive at this point.
There it is.
A lot of redundancy.
Yeah.
As you're describing the building envelope.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be condensed, no question.
It just seems like we're actually rereading almost the entire opening
Yeah,
statement.
yes, yeah.
Right.
Just a comment. I'm gonna skip over the crawl space underneath the kitchen. We've already read that.
Right.
Okay.
I think, why it was put there is we weren't sure, because I think somebody brought up at the last meeting, all that construction related discussion, should it be under the building history, or should it be here under the building envelope? And that's why it was put in both places, because we hadn't made a determination yet. Should we keep it in the beginning, in the building history, or should we take it out of the building history and keep it here? Building envelope.
Building envelope.
Types of construction material used. I think it would probably be best in building envelope.
And
So-
not in the history
And
portion.
not in the history. So that's why,
Okay,
when you take the one out, you'll still have the other one there, and you won't have to.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so has there been a major repair or replacement of the exterior walls? We're saying no. This is a change from the last SOI that was submitted. It says, other than the 1916, 1973 additions, the exterior walls, including the wood-framed, non-insulated windows, are original, not wood-farmed. Has there been a major repair or replacement of the roof? Yes or no? No, the current roof has exceeded life expectancy.
That's also a change, too.
That's a change also.
Last time it said yes.
Well, I think has there been a major repair or replacement? I think you could answer that, yes, there was. However, even that life expectancy has since passed.
That's like trading in your car with 150,000 miles and saying the engine was replaced at 25,000 miles. It's had a replacement engine.
But does it say it in with the envelope that it was at one point in time, there was work done to it?
Well, I think we have to be a little bit cautious of one of the things that I know the MSBA looks for is, has the building been routinely maintained?
Right.
And if we can say to them, yes, this is already going on to, this would be our third roof on the structure, that we as a town didn't just sit back on a 1954 building and wait for the roof to fail. We have done
Right.
roofs, probably several, if we look back in the history. I don't know
That can be done in the
exactly.
capital section,
You know?
bottom.
But all
Saying
the
no.
roofs were necessary, though. It
So
wasn't
you
like
need to
we were
reflect
doing
that.
it just to
Right,
update them.
exactly.
We needed the new roofs. It wasn't something we could survive with.
No, but,
Yeah, no.
type of roof
Right.
is a rubber membrane.
Well, and as you're saying,
And
I
again,
think
I-
it should be saying that we never, like you're saying, should never have said that it's.
The rubber membrane roofs are a combination of flat, vaulted, and pitched surfaces. The last re-roofing took place in 1991. I mean, just right there, that, you know, we can say that we have put a roof on it, but it was in 1991, which was probably, what was 91, 81, 71, 60, I mean, it was like 35 years after the original roof was put on, so that was probably about time. Well, we're about there again.
We may get some of this type of technical information
Yeah, right.
laid out in the
Yep.
report also.
At the time, some skylights were replaced and many were roofed over. With a minimum life expectancy of 10 years, Tappe Associates stated in 2001 that the current roof would probably need replacement by 2008 at the outset. Now, 6 years beyond 2008, evidence of roof deterioration is commonplace, often manifesting in leaks in the library, east wing, and A wing. The existing insulation under the rubber roof is compressed and diverting water the wrong way. The school will need a new roof. Last year, a major renovation was 1973. Addition of two-story classroom east wing to the original building's classroom wing. Has there been a major repair or replacement of the windows? No. The windows are all single glazed awnings and plexiglass infill panels. The original 53 building has all painted wood frames, but the majority of additions are metal. In 60 a wing addition, windows, particularly at ground level, are severely corroded and caked with salt from winter salting of the adjacent access road, a practice which has been curtailed, well, on paper. Other than minimal window caulking or replacement of broken window panes, there has been no major repair or replacement of windows at the facility. Existing windows are a vintage construction and insulation from original 1954 structure additions in early 60s and 73. Roof skylights were also added during each of these construction phases after the original date of establishment. Many skylights have been roofed over when the roof was last replaced in 91. The windows are all single glazed awnings and plexiglass infill panels. The original 1954 building has all painted wood frames, majority in addition of metal. Again, I think we got to look at this. We've got a lot of repetitions going on here. All windows are in poor shape and were recommended for replacement by the Tappe Associates in 2001. There is a concern in the multi-purpose room, also constructed in 60, where window damage has been noted, requiring immediate attention and replacement of some windows and frames using plexiglass and wood. The last addition was in 73. Then we go into some of the mechanical and electrical systems. The existing electrical service consists of an original main switchboard located at the main electric room. The service rating is rated at 1600 amps, 120, 208 volt, 30 4-wire, manufactured by GE. It is main switch section with 2 distribution sections that feed 19 sub-panels throughout the building, as well as pumps and HVAC equipment in the boiler room. The condition of the equipment is poor, circa 1950, and has exceeded life expectancy. Most panels are located in corridor areas and are accessible to students and the public. Existing lighting and power panels are circuit breaker type and are rated at 120, 208, 30, 4 wire. The existing panels do not appear to have spare circuit breakers for the addition of new lighting and power circuits. Circuits and outlets are constantly blowing out, creating difficulty in reestablishing power as well as disruptions in learning. The existing panels are in poor condition. Federal Pacific Company, which no longer is in business, manufactured the panels in the 1973 wing edition, and replacement parts are hard to find. The power company is Massachusetts Electric. The main electric room does have 2 entrances. The transformer feeding the building is located outside the building and was replaced approximately 4 years ago. All,
Did we find out the date of when that happened?
I asked Ralph and their crew, and they thought it was about 4 years ago.
and I don't know,
exact-
possibly here we also may want to say, was replaced due to failure.
Yeah, you probably,
Failed.
Due
Yeah.
to failure, approximately 4 years ago.
Maybe the
the
deputy
squirrel
chief
get
remember,
into
you
this?
remember when it happened, when the transformer blew?
Actually, my son was a senior in high school
Oh.
that year because he was excited he didn't have to make up the extra day. That's why I remember it. So he's been out of school.
What year was that?
Yeah, he graduated 3 years ago.
That's
just-
Yeah.
They all,
way I remember
seniors all
things.
felt like that was like a treat for them.
2011, 2010?
2000,
Lasso?
2011.
2011.
There you go. All classrooms have insufficient outlets and inadequate power distribution systems, necessitating the use of a multitude of extension cords and power strips that are often exposed and do not provide optimum teaching and learning as well as user safety. There are broad restrictions to providing technology and power in many areas of the building. In 2001, Tappy Associates evaluated the building's electrical system and pointed out that any new construction would necessitate service ratings that would be generally designed for a demand load of 10 watts per square foot. Tappy also recommended that a new service rated at 1,200 amps, 227, 480 volt, 34 wire be installed. Mechanical description. Saugus High School has had all 4 boilers replaced as well as its hot water boiler. However, the related boiler room infrastructure and related systems that distribute steam heat throughout the building are original. One maintenance technician uses the metaphor, the heart of the heating system is new, but the arteries and veins are tired and worn out. The expansive nature of the building and adjacent additions, along with the constricted crawl space where the steam pipes travel, make replacement of delivery and return systems extremely problematic and likely cost prohibitive given the multitude of other building deficiencies. The boiler room experiences groundwater infiltration as well as water entry from the chimney, which has been noted to be in need of repair due to large cracks and need for waterproofing. The mere presence of extraneous water in the boiler room setting results in humidity levels that are unacceptable for electronic devices, gauges, and devices that require a low humidity environment. Every 1 to 2 weeks, there are boiler room related repair issues costing $1,500 to $2,000 each for larger steam related repairs. The automatic temperature control system is of a pneumatic type and is provided with a single air storage tank with dual compressors and dual motors located on a tank which was replaced about 4 years ago. The system is provided with a refrigerated air dryer located on an adjacent wall and was provided with oil-water separators and was generating dual pressures day-night control. The automatic temperature control panel was noted to be extremely antiquated in 2001 and appeared at the time to be original condition to the building. It did appear then that the system was capable of operating, however, it is extremely antiquated. Both the refrigerator, air dryer, and compressed air storage tank was provided with a manual blowdown which discharged to an adjacent pail receptor. There are 66 classrooms plus offices that should have new univents that are noisy and rely on inadequate and unreliable controls, causing vast temperature fluctuations that more often than not are of an overheating nature. It is not unusual for staff to manually shut univent fans or open windows on sub-freezing days to cool down overheated rooms. Other than the compressor, the entire system was noted to be extremely antiquated and based purely on age consideration. Replacement and/or upgrade was recommended. The auditorium is provided with air handling units located in the upper mechanical area. The air handling units are provided with heating coils, supply fans, filters, and source outside ventilation air. This equipment is original to the 1954 building. In 2001, Tappy Associates stated that the age of this equipment would suggest it has reached its maximum serviceable life and for no other reason other than the age should it be replaced. Similarly, the central exhaust system below the auditorium stage is also original to the building and was also noted as having reached maximum serviceable life in the 2001 Tappy report. Rooftop exhaust vents are antiquated and should be converted to energy efficient units. There are approximately 75 rooftop exhaust fans in need of replacement, including rooftop covers that frequently dislodge and blow off, causing safety concerns. Within the shop areas, all mechanical systems were deemed original to the building by Tappy in 2001. Based on their age, it was noted the mechanical HVAC components were due for replacement. Similar comments were made for the cafeteria mechanicals, door entrances, and vestibules. Classroom HVAC systems were also noted as antiquated and due for replacement in 2001, in spite of efforts to maintain and clean unit ventilators. Also located within each classroom are wall-mounted pneumatic thermostats. All controls throughout the entire building were noted to be extremely antiquated in 2001 by Tappy, and most do not function as originally intended. Based purely on age and antiquated nature of the entire control system, the entire system should be upgraded at this time. The plumbing system is antiquated and in need of replacement. Other than renovations to the girls' and boys' lavatories in the C and West Wing over 10 years ago, remaining facilities are vintage to the original school. Water shut-off valves are so old it is near impossible to completely shut off water flow, making repairs, thus requiring shutting the water off. Flow while making repairs, thus requiring shutting the water for the entire school. For safety reasons, this must be done during non-school hours, resulting in excessive labor costs and inconveniences. Lead in delivery pipes requiring continual testing protocols to ensure that drinking water is within acceptable limits. Where am I? I lost myself.
Very bottom.
Acceptable limits. Has there been repair of major boilers? Yes. 2003, steam oil-fired boilers were replaced with natural gas boilers and fuel delivery system upgraded for natural gas. However, abandoned oil tanks remain in the building, within the building, along with outside underground storage tanks that have also been abandoned. That should say filled and abandoned. They were
filled.
properly, they actually were properly put down, so to speak.
But having the ones inside the building's a no-no, isn't it?
Yeah, if a structural engineer says that it's gonna damage the building pulling the tanks out, you can slurry them and leave them in place.
Which is what happened to the one right outside the band room, I believe.
And that's a judgment call on the chief of the department. But obviously that was the case here.
Yeah, because I know when the DEP was in for a completely non-related issue 3 years ago, that was one of the things they questioned, but we were able to provide them with the documentation of when and how and the reports that surrounded it from the maintenance department, and they were completely okay with what we had done in that instance. Because I guess I think the issue was that part of the tank actually went under the footings of the existing building.
So maybe if the state says we should be building on top of this building, it'll be like some archaeological dig 100 years from now, where you see everything, the layers, this is where the original tank
Well, we also know that, like, I can't give you the exact timeline, but like 10 years ago, we were told we were told to cap the chimney because we were getting the water that was running down the flue and into the boiler room. When the DEP came out 3 years ago, that was the first thing they saw, and they were like, absolutely not, you cannot cap a chimney. And so that was removed, so that's why now we have back to
They have
having
water coming in.
water infiltration. So I mean,
It's good for Santa Claus. Shouldn't say.
Has there been a major replacement of the HVAC system? No. The building interior includes flooring systems, finishes, ceilings, and lighting. The floors are finished with vinyl asbestos tile and vinyl composition tile. Most of the main corridors have been tiled over to, quote, encapsulate asbestos beneath asbestos-bearing tiles beneath. Tiles in the A-wing are original and worn through in spots. In the industrial areas, the floor is painted concrete and in fair condition. Administrative offices are carpeted or VCT. A new carpet has been installed in the library and administrative offices. The auditorium stage and original gym floor has been either replaced or refurbished in 2010. All core classrooms have ACT or plaster and are acceptable and are a fair to acceptable condition, depending on the building location. The original gym was recommended for replacement of acoustic ceiling panels and was completed in 2010. Partially.
No, it wasn't completed.
It wasn't completed. It was started in 2010, the original gym.
Yeah, it's not even close to getting completed.
No.
Because
No.
they weren't fire retardant, the
Just
stuff
add
they put up.
partially in there.
Yeah. It was partially completed in 2010. We actually were told to stop. Ceiling tiles in corridors contain asbestos and are in poor condition, missing, or broken.
That asbestos claim was given to me by one of the maintenance workers today, and the footnote says that should be verified.
Yeah, we need to verify whether that is actually true or not.
Well,
was
you have
Al.
you have the asbestos book in the main office. You should, where it's all identified. You can just look it up.
Okay. This was addressed in 2010 by town maintenance departments with replacement of areas as needed. There are some areas with glue laminate beams in the library that are original to the building. The interior lighting system is original 1954 installation with a retrofit of the fixtures in the late 90s that included 32-watt T8 lamps and electronic ballast. The existing lighting in the 1973 edition has 34-watt T12 lamps and energy-saving magnetic ballasts. Incandescent lamps are still used in the boiler room and mechanical areas. All exit lighting in the original 54 building has been updated, but the exit lighting in the 73 edition area remains lit by fluorescent lamps. The gymnasium area is lit by HID high bay fixtures and incandescent fixtures for emergency. There is an emergency generator that powers lights in some designated circuits circuits are tied to it. However, exhaust systems, boilers, heating equipment, nor the cafeteria are tied to it. These limitations prevent Saugus High School from ever being utilized as an emergency shelter site. There is an emergency lighting system powered by a generator. The fire protection in Saugus High School is in need of a complete updating to a Class A fire alarm system and full coverage sprinkler system. The fire alarm system dates back to the original construction, and in turn, the parts are difficult to obtain when needed. The fire alarm devices that need total replacement are the fire alarm panel, which is run through antiquated fuses, a complete wiring upgrade. New smoke detectors cannot be installed on existing wiring. Also, hardwired coverage for all areas needed to be protected via the fire code and plumbing code. Although currently working, the fire alarm system cannot be tied to any new system. It cannot be upgraded from a heat detector system to a heat and smoke detector system. A sprinkler system will need to be upgraded, will be needed to upgrade to a Class A fire protection system. The auditorium stage venting is currently malfunctioning, and fire safety related to antiquated electrical controls and overhead stage lights have been noted as concerns. Both gyms have issues with flooring, ceiling tiles, athletic equipment, bleachers, heat and ventilation units, and condensation pumps.
Can I just stop you there for 1 second, the gyms? Also, the lighting in the main gym, if you notice it, it's actually chained up because the units are too heavy. So the janitor said chain them up, just as precaution. Like if you go through all the lights in the gym, you'll see the units like that big, and they have chains wrapped around them going all the way up onto the ceiling.
It's good to know. I made a note.
The cafeteria and teachers' cafeteria is in need of a complete renovation, including modernization of lighting, ceiling tiles, flooring, kitchen line equipment, programs, and operations.
Frank, hold on.
Yeah.
From here on, this is the area where we left off that we're trying to add to, and it's the programs and operations, core educational spaces, and capacity and utilization. This is going to require, I think, Lisa Howard perhaps to look at what opportunities are being lost, and for you guys to review it from the educational
Okay.
standpoint. But we've been working on it as late as this afternoon.
This one has 5,000 character limit.
Well, it's nowhere near that at this point.
All right, so I think what we saw from at least I saw from the reading was, there are some areas where I think we've talked about, we can remove a little bit of the repetition. We're gonna move one section away from the history and move it into the building envelope.
Yep.
I think there was some of that also when we're talking about, where they call out specifically and I noticed this earlier until you actually read it out loud, but where they call out specifically the windows, I think we talked about the windows in the envelope as well. So I mean,
Yep.
there's some places where we can maybe streamline this a little bit.
Yep.
So, I'm not gonna, since this is still a work in progress from this point on, from the programs and operations.
Well, this one, I think you guys looked at. Why don't you do this one, and then we'll just leave off there if you want to go on to the other ones. But programs and operations, because, you know, if you have things that you can add to that, now's the time to,
You want to open up to some discussion on
well,
what we've went over already? It's a lot of information, I think.
Why don't we talk about the building as we talked about it then?
all right.
Then we can talk about programs and operations.
Okay, sounds good. So you want to do it like people's takeaways the same way? What are they taking away from all the mechanical things and...
Well, I mean, obviously, it's personally, once again, it's the whole fire department issues, no sprinklers, only heat, not smoke detectors. I believe now, obviously, CO2 detectors are supposed to be on all the furnaces and for automatic shut-offs, and we have nothing. So, I mean, that's, I think, certainly a point that is sticking.
I think there are some CO.
I'm sure there's some, but I'm just, obviously not to the...
I mean, I think one of the takeaways from this is gonna be that Peter's done an exceptional job of putting in an awful lot of details that would be absolutely lost on the layperson listening to this presentation tonight or reading this. But I think a lot of this is necessary, that type of detail, and I don't think we're done yet, because I think once the report comes back from
More details.
the report, there could be even more updated details. I just think, like I said, I think it's important that we sort of watch where we're getting repetitive, because there is so much detail, and to hear it, I know it's important to hear the message more than once, but I think we just need to clean that part of it up.
I think looking at, the definition of the envelope, may help. I think, the envelope usually, I think, I have to look at it, but I think usually the envelope is what separates the exterior from the interior, different than, some of the history, I think.
The one thing I see with the structure is you can kind of quantify the learning time that's getting taken away from the kids because of the structure. And I think a new school would get that back.
Well, let's go to the three themes, all right? The edits are easy, that's not the issue. The issue is, are the three themes coming out? So when you think of building envelope, are you seeing accessibility issues? Are you seeing obsolescence? Are you seeing sprawl? Do those themes jump out at you?
Oh, it just, every time we say wing, this wing, that wing, it's, you can tell how sprawling it is just by all the wings we have,
If you think of the middle school, or junior high, the middle school, you don't think of it in those terms.
Right, because the middle school has the three parts. It has the academic part, the office space,
Cafeteria.
and the encore part.
One of the things I think would be interesting to hear, and that since we have Sergeant Van Steensberg here, is do you think it adequately addressed the concerns that you talked about before the reading? I've noticed a lot of the fire safety concerns and getting the large apparatus around and the smoke detectors, but the concerns that you raised to me didn't really jump out to me as something we were addressing. Exterior surveillance. I know you mentioned you could get a cruiser around, but for example, in the winter months, it's certainly not going to be easy for you to go up in the field and circle the building that way. And all the nooks and crannies of the unique design, the overhead footprint of the building. What were your thoughts on it? Did you feel like it was adequately?
In fairness to that, they were just emailed Friday on this.
Okay.
And he hasn't had a chance to write his report yet.
Okay.
Whereas Mike Newbury was able to get some information in on Friday, but they just learned about this request on Friday. So that will be brought in too.
Okay, yeah.
You're right, it needs to be in.
There's also another element. Priority one, which is the health and safety.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in there. But I think, and I was just thinking of what's the reason why you're seeing all of the fire in this as opposed to the police? I think the fire systems are inadequate, outdated, however you want to term it. We don't have any of the security systems. So they're not outdated, they're non-existent.
Okay.
So it's tough to make comments on things, on details
They're
where
part
they
of that.
don't physically
When you
exist.
talk about HVAC, electrical, plumbing, fire,
Right.
I mean, if we, like Mike said, if we had security that was original to the building,
That
I
existed.
don't even know what it would have looked
So
like
really,
if
I
there
think-
was.
But it's a lot in the priority one.
Yeah.
In the priority one, where it comes into the health and safety,
We address some
there's a lot
more
more
of
of
that.
that addressed,
Yeah, and I think of that as like, the fire department has a lot to do with the actual construction
the building.
of how it's set up, and like, for the public safety and the police, we're looking at it as, especially as for the patrol force, it's, okay, if we have, how are we gonna have the safest building possible? Like, if there was some type of major incident, like, how is this building set up to accommodate that? And right now, it's extremely poor. There's really only one way to get vehicles in and out of that area, so you don't even have like, if there's some type of catastrophe on, the main roadway that comes into the school, you don't even have a secondary route to get vehicles in or out of. And then a major priority is, if you have to evacuate the building and get students out, you have sides of the building, like we all talked about, like, you physically can't get students and staff out onto Route 1. You can't get them through fence areas to the commercial area. You're very limited to where you have, and a lot of it comes to like danger zones and stuff, so like you'd have to actually walk people back around through danger zones. It's completely poor if you think of it as there's some type of like mass emergency casualty situation. It's like, it would just be extremely impossible to do it safely.
And
I
Chris,
mean, then you have a lack of the video surveillance.
Right.
As well as, no inability to monitor the egresses if they're open or closed or whatnot.
Right. And
Whereas you
that
would in a
kind of
modern
goes back to
system.
what I was saying. I mean, it's not even in the report because it's non-existent. So,
Right.
yeah, but in priority one, when we get a chance to read over priority one, there is a lot more of it, probably should be more of it now that you mentioned, because I don't think, and I'll speak for myself, when I was thinking about the security element, my thoughts were more keeping an intruder out. And, when I'm talking about from a police standpoint, I never even considered the fact that you need a patrol car going around. It just seems so obvious when you make the statement that all the other schools you can easily get around, whereas high school, you can barely get around much of the building at all.
Right, and we're doing, I mean, daily, every shift, I mean, we patrol a lot of the town property, okay, so we're doing area checks, I mean, it's in the log, we're doing building checks of the schools every single night, and, that's important, what's out of place from one night to the other. When you have the same, patrol force that's driving around the school every single day, when something is out of place, it comes up right away, okay, but with the high school, it's just, I mean, you could spend all night walking around it and checking everything, it's just.
So Paul, when you're going to send, I mean, you see it's just like a paragraph. Is this what you said here tonight? Could you, will you articulate that in an email that we can weave into this? And it should be under site description, because they're saying known conditions that would impact a potential project. And if we go before this Shark Tank of MSBA, we want them to realize that, you know what, you can't build on this existing site, on this configuration of this layout, because you're still going to have that problem that you're talking about and that Mike talked about. So whatever you can, I've taken notes on what you said, but I think you can express it best in, 3, 4, 5 sentences to weave into that site description.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see what you have in the other part, too. Because
One of the things that stood out to me was when you mentioned with the Belmonte, how you can drive right around it, and I think you mentioned something about, you could have 4 offices and patrol cars and have a perimeter around that building. And when you said that, I think the picture of the high school was up on
I agree. It was
on the board, and I looked at it and I said, how many police officers do we need to set up that perimeter that you're talking about? And I can't imagine how many you would need, and you certainly couldn't take a car back there to do it, so.
Think about if you had to search the building for a perpetrator inside the building. And try, you know what I mean?
There's no rhyme or reason to the construction, so.
Right.
Not to mention, every single person covering that building has to go the same exact way in and out to get around to it. so.
There's so many small rooms in there, you wouldn't even,
Going through the programs and operations, or are we bouncing to priority one?
That's up to the board. I mean, I can continue to read programs and operations. I mean, you've got a good feel for where this is headed, I think. As Peter stated earlier, I think we still are, this is, the rest of this, programs and operations to the bottom, is still sort of a work in progress. I know Peter worked on a lot of this today, but I mean, that's where we're sort of at. Core educational spaces and programs and operations, I think we're still sort of penning, so I don't know if we want to read that right now, we can, it's up to whatever the board wants to do.
What does everyone prefer?
well, if you have more work on it, why don't we go to priority one, and you guys come back to that one, Chuck?
You want to do that?
Okay.
We actually printed out
The current state of these.
the current state of priority 1, 3, and 7. Like I explained earlier, 4 we really haven't started working on. 5, we're waiting to get the feedback from the report. 1, we felt we could start writing about. 3 and 7 are basically
Very similar.
very similar, they're almost reprints from the last SOI
Thank you.
submission. Our accreditation status and our impact that the administration of the school system feels on the educational opportunities for the kids. I don't think that's changed very, very much, nor will it change very, very much.
Can I just note, this is a draft, I know it's not on there, but it's just a draft.
And it should also be noted that these are in much earlier working stages than the history piece. The history piece we've at least seen at the last meeting. This is the first time most of you are seeing what's out there on priorities 1, 3, and 7.
Yeah, I'd like to go over priority 1 now, especially with the sergeant here.
Okay, we can do that.
And if we do
I'll
like
put it up.
one paragraph at a time, and
Yep.
maybe if people want to jump in, like
Sure.
we did last meeting,
These are the ones that are limited to the 5,000 characters, including spaces.
right?
Saugus High School was built 60 years ago and has 2 updated editions in 1960 and the latest in 72. The original design materials is not optimal given the New England climate and today's concern for school safety. It was built and designed prior to many, if not all, of the current ADA requirements and codes. The classrooms are configured for modern curriculum in the 1950s, not the 21st century. For many of those reasons, Saugus High School lacks many necessities needed to provide a safe and viable 21st century curriculum. In the major area of safety, the current fire alarm and safety features are severely outdated by any current standards. The fire alarm is original to the building and often gives off false alarms. Repair parts for this system are impossible to find, and the fire department has determined on several occasions that the entire system should be replaced. Besides the system being in near disrepair, it lacks many essentials such as a sprinkler system and visual alerts to meet current code requirements. The sprawling nature of Saugus High School campus are a logistical nightmare to monitor. The school has a...
Do we want to include the number of false alarms once we have an actual...
Well, if he gives us the data on that, we can put that in,
If
absolutely.
he said if there was 200 over a period of
5
time.
years.
That's
Right.
200 over the last 5 years.
You think we should include that?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
important.
Absolutely.
great idea.
You writing that in, or, okay. I was just making it on the sheet.
And the impact on time and learning.
The school has a reported 43 entrance and exit points spread over the entire building. There is only one working camera focused on the front entryway, and a locking door is the primary entry point for all students, staff, and visitors. However, there's no security vestibule, nor is a recording system for the camera. The hallways, common areas, and other 40-plus doors have no security cameras or alarms. The few alarms present at Saugus High School are intended for non-occupied theft prevention and are not designed as a intruder alarm. Insufficient security and ambient lighting is also a concern in many of the corridors and in most, if not all, of the exterior of the school. Massive security must be added to bring the school up to acceptable standards. I think at that point, I'm gonna pause because that's gonna go into,
Then we start talking about a little of the ADA safety.
we were taking this one paragraph at a time. The first paragraph was the opening, the second was the,
On the opening paragraph of 1972, and we've gone back and forth on that last edition, the annual reports online at the public library show that the WD edition was staffed for the first time in February of 1974, and it was completed in January of 1973. So I changed all the 72s to 73.
problem.
Done.
So but one of the questions that is being asked of SMMAA is when you describe the date of an addition, is it based on the occupancy permit, the funding, or the construction? There's 3 potentials there, so
I think as long as
that
we're
could still change again, as long as we're
consistent with the numbers. If we've been going with 73,
Yeah.
we should go with 73 here. But I think the second paragraph, which deals with the fire and safety features, I think, and security. I think we can add the 200 over the last 5 years.
And the lack of the smoke, if you can get the smoke alarm information in there, you have the sprinkler system and visual alerts, but also smoke alarms.
And CO2 detection.
But I think this is where we want to add the fact that we don't have the perimeter of the building.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it both, like, from an exterior standpoint and also the interior standpoint. Like, everyone's, like, a building search of that high school would be a nightmare, complete nightmare. Have to, if you would, I know I was personally involved with one incident where they believed that there was something in the high school.
With the lockdown?
Yeah, and I mean, it was hours on hours and hours.
It took 4.5 hours or so to clear the building.
Exactly, so.
And there was really nothing you could do. I mean, that was how long it took because of the protocol.
So even if a report was longer than we could insert, it could also be attached to the application too, if you wanted to expand on other safety,
Except that
put more
when
information.
it says the report must be from an independent source that is not under the control of the school district or the city.
I understand that, but you can attach reference materials, and that would be a reference material, not a report, not a...
Okay, so
You, we're kind of new getting into this discussion with the police department. One of the resources that the town is like for public safety is recently been getting involved with is we're a member of NEMLEC, which is the Northeast Coalition of Police Departments. And one of the resources, they have a STARS program, which is a school safety program. So,
We have that.
you have that. I mean, have they done have they ever done a study of the school?
With NEMLEC, what they'll do is they'll walk you through an assessment, but they won't put an actual report together.
Okay.
That's why we're having another company do that, for a pay, for a fee, they'll do an assessment and put an actual report in writing, which I think is going to be beneficial. There's a problem with NEMLEC, they're great, but they'll walk you through, come out and do the whole assessment, but they won't put anything into a report type form.
Okay, that's good to know.
But they did give us some tips when they did do a walkthrough of our schools. At the time we signed up, they did give a report to the previous superintendent on that, so I'm sure we can dig that up. Not a report that we could, but we could reference, maybe some facts in there that we could use.
I met with Chief DeMello last week, too. He's in the process of trying to revamp that as well over the next couple of weeks.
does it mention, Wendy, any of these things that he mentions that?
I don't recall, it was quite a while ago and I wasn't
Some of it
involved
might be
directly.
outdated, too. I mean, I looked into, like, the energy assessment, and I couldn't find anything, but when I talked to a couple people today, they talked about, like, if it's 2008, the technology and even for an energy assessment. Security-wise, you might be something, but if we're not able to, been assured that we have somebody locked in and that can do it within the time frame, that aspect, so they'll probably hit upon all that.
It was part of the STAR program. I know what they wanted to do was scan all the floor plans so that the police would have
We have-
access.
we have the
We
floor
have all
plans,
that,
yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So
We have the floor
we've done
A
all,
lot of floor plans.
it is. But you have access to those, correct? The police
We do,
department?
yeah, we
In
do
the case
have a,
of,
They do.
we actually have a folder full of maps in the back of all the cars, so.
they're not electronic? I mean, you can access
They do,
them
they
electronically?
do have it electronic.
Yes, somewhere,
Yeah, practically speaking, when, we do, I know
No,
we
I
do
mean-
have hard copy maps in the case of an incident that happened.
Yeah, I know. In an incident, if you go to a school, they hand you the packet, turn it over to the police department, everything's in there, including electronic disc of all the plans.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if you actually had them outside of the school at any time, but if you have a folder, at least you have something to start with, right? To reference?
Yeah, and a lot of the cars have at least something. I don't believe they actually have the discs, but.
Any other feedback on that
I have a
paragraph?
question. Would this be an area where you had mentioned that there's only, if there was a major problem, there's only one way in, and where would the students and faculty go? Like, 'cause there's the highways on, I mean, would this be somewhere that you
Yes.
could mention
Yeah,
that?
So-
I would think this is the
section,
appropriate
yes.
place to put it, yeah.
I mean, 'cause I think that,
Yeah.
that hits home hard.
I think Frank's trying to write that in now.
Are there any other safety issues you think that should be highlighted in this section? Anything else, you think?
Because the rest goes on to ADA, so, I mean, I'll continue if you want. And again, on the rest of this, we have that assessment happening tomorrow. We have somebody going through and touring the building tomorrow. So we'll have more concrete, documentation on this tomorrow.
The perceived health and safety problems.
Right, so again, some of the ADA stuff is a safety issue for anybody who has issues getting throughout the building. So the rest of section for priority 1 is ADA. Although there are many exits throughout the building, 43 in total, none are handicap accessible due to either lack of ramps or automated handicap entrance systems. Both of the multi-level academic wings have only one elevator on one side of the wing, limiting handicap egress. The science labs do not have ADA-approved lab stations. The nurses' suite and most of the student and faculty restrooms are not handicap accessible. None of the doors in the building have ADA knobs, and the elevator in the WD wing is unusable independently due to height of the controls. The central and west wing hallways were designed with transitional slopes, and their grade is much steeper than required for current ADA compliance. Any questions on that? And when we say none of the doors are handicap accessible, it's independently,
Either non-ramped or they don't have the
He's got the push bars. Yeah.
self-openers.
and the last paragraph on this section is structurally, the building has issues related to its 60-year-old age. The issues include non-line structurally deficient chimney and many non-compliant building materials, out-of-code electrical and plumbing systems, and out-of-code safety system, as mentioned earlier. Major structural concerns lie in the fact the building was built slab on grade, leaving minimal opportunities for vertical expansion. The roof, as reported by the 2001 TAP-A report, was approaching the end of its useful life expectancy and has long outlasted its useful lifespan. Many repair orders and man-hours have been spent extending the lifespan. There have been leaks in the past that have been repaired, but we are in need of a new roof. Several original steam pipes have burst over the last couple of years, resulting in disruption of daily programs and additional maintenance costs. Fortunately, no injuries to students or faculty have resulted in these failures. These failures have caused damage in several areas, including the West Wing, C Wing, and shop area. Delays in identification of these problems have led to mold on several occasions. There has also been infrastructure concerns related to systems such as plumbing, electrical, heating, and foam. These issues were identified by the TAP-A Associates in 2001, who indicated that many of the building systems have met or exceeded their useful lifetime and remain essentially unchanged over the following 13 years.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Well, just a comment on the ADA part again.
Yes.
Seeing that they were trying to look to, to know that we're at least upgrading or what we've done once in a while, you throw in something that we've fixed or accomplished.
Next section.
That's
What
in
have
the
you done?
capital section and the one that we didn't go over. If we go back to it, you'll see that I put in about the ramps at the A-wing and the elevator in the A-wing.
But it's also,
Oh, okay.
And the next, what have you?
sorry, it's also in the
Mitigate
next
the
And the next
problems
one, please
described.
describe the measures the school district is taking to mitigate the problems.
so here are the
Okay,
problems,
very
and there are some, like naturally tearing up the ramps in the hallways isn't going to do it.
Right.
Just so you see, I don't know if any of you saw, but as we were sitting here when we were talking, I added some of the,
Go back up. Right there.
sprawling nature of Saugus, I logistics nightmare. Please don't judge me on the spelling. I'm lost about my spell check here. I don't know how to use it on an Apple. The perimeter of the building is inaccessible to motorized police surveillance and daily inspections. Police department has noted the large amount of unmonitorable areas or dead spaces surrounding the school. And then I'm gonna put in something, I didn't wanna pen it right now, but I'm gonna write something about the access to the school being, you know, one point of egress and exit from the parking lot. So, I was thinking about that. And then so I added that in. Again, I think this is all gonna be online. What I would ask is anyone who has comments, either make them online, or if you're reading this tonight, to please make comments and send an email to either any one of us on the writing committee, and we'll make sure that we include your concerns.
You think there should be more said about the phone system or communications is in the security sense? Or no?
Where it says out-of-code safety systems, do you think maybe we should add in and non-existent systems? I mean, just to go back to where we don't even have a system, never mind out of code.
Yeah, absolutely.
It needs to be embedded in there.
Has noise ever been an issue at all in the classrooms because of the proximity to the businesses and the highway?
No, really not, I would say not since the portable classrooms came down.
Okay.
Has it really been a concern? The portables that were there between the...
Put the picture up again for a
Yeah.
sec, 'cause
You can still see the,
yeah, if you look, the only time there's been, that I can remember having taught there, where there was noise concerns was when they built the complex behind the high school to the south.
Where the arrow is now is where we had portables that connected from the A wing, and they went off and they came in the back door of the tower's gym.
Right, but if you go...
what did those come down in the 80s, early, mid-80s?
Yeah.
Yeah, early 80s.
Steph, were they there when you were there?
Actually, I don't remember them, no.
I don't either.
Okay, so then, I can tell you, I was there in '78, I graduated, and they
could've
were
come down right
there,
after that.
and we can time frame it in, so they came down.
Maybe the first year I was in,
Yes,
but
they
not
came
the-
down.
early '80s. They removed them.
But the only time there was a real noise concern of any consequence was when they built
think they may have been there when we
the
first
shopping center behind the A-wing.
Oh, when they were building it?
Yes, and I only can
Not-
say that because I
yeah.
was teaching in the A-wing at the
Yeah,
time.
or if there's a new, not if a new store is going in, but when a store gets retrofitted, it gets pretty loud in the A-wing.
But not typically,
But it's construction noise,
Yes.
not like.
it's not
it goes away
highway,
when they-
there's not highway noise, no. Or very little in the classroom.
So again, I think those are all, everything I've heard so far about priority one is valid,
But-
but please share it so that we can make we can make the changes.
The insulation also deadens the noise as well, and even though if it's not an issue of Route 1, if you build up, let's say you decide, a new building's decided and you're gonna go up a couple of stories, it's gonna make a difference in sound from Route 1 being above.
Yeah.
Insulation will make a difference, but.
All right, so question two, Mike, you
Question
holding
two.
out, are you all right?
Yeah,
You want me to-
I'll get through question two. And this deals with what we've done as a district to try to mitigate some of the problems. Although there's several earlier renovations, the most notably and certainly centrally located bathroom renovation and the auditorium renovation of 1999 addressed some of the ADA compliance issues and the non-compliant building materials. Several other small renovations to the building, including a floor resurfacing project in 2009, and the tower's gym floor and gym infrastructure, including new scoreboard and floor resurfacing and relining for the first time in 2012 or 11. Two doors have been added, one in the learning common to provide access to the courtyard, another in the A-wing connecting the hallway that serves as the building's second handicapped exit. This was built in 2013 and includes a ramp for handicap use. In 2011-2012, an elevator was built in the A-wing to allow for handicap access to this split-level wing. However, the addition fails to meet the required dual egress points from the wing. The majority of the extensive list of repairs and additions to the all infrastructure systems has been of as-needed maintenance nature or reaction to a system failure, but lack system upgrades and should not be considered as a renovation. There have been no updates related to safety or security. The supervision of the hallways and front entrance of the high school, staff on duty, and minor repairs to doors and other safety equipment as needed serve as the high school safety system. In fact, a camera system that did exist in the cafeteria when a bank branch was housed there is no longer functioning and has been disabled. I'm sorry, I skipped a little.
That's all right. No,
Spotted it.
again, comments, thoughts?
The amount of money, and this comes up all the time, the amount of money spent on maintenance of
Oh, yeah.
patching or reacting to failures, that can be documented. We know what we spend on the high school every year on these emergencies. Do you think we can get a dollar amount to plug in?
And you know what, when I wrote this afternoon, as I was writing this, we had spoken with Carlos, and Carlos said, whatever you want for numbers or number of times they're called in to repair or do or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't sure how much of that you wanted in here or not, so again, this was only a first draft, so
Yep.
I think that's a comment that's probably very well taken, and Mike and I can sit with Carlos and kind of at least come up with a yearly, or Ralph could probably give us, right off the top of his head, a yearly amount of what we're charging out.
I gotta be honest with you, I think the dollar amount would probably be more meaningful than
Yeah,
the list of what was done.
And like you said, how can you make those ramps at the west wing and the C wing accessible? You can't do it. There's nothing that.
Well, I think they built it to match the contour of the land, so
Right.
it's on the grade, so that's what
Exactly.
happened. But I think when we're talking about, could we go over all of the maintenance that's been done? Yes, Carlos could do that.
But I think just a yearly sum.
But if we could get a yearly sum for maybe the last 3 years or 4 years, that might have more impact, because that literally is good money after bad.
Or,
when you're talking about-
or actually,
Right.
that's where you might, in question 3, is where you might tie this all in. Exactly what you just said, because now you're saying, please provide a detailed explanation of the impact of the problems are having on your educational program. Well, if we're spending $500,000 a year in routine maintenance.
And that's a guess, you just.
I have no idea. But even if we're spending $100,000, $100,000 is a lot of programming that you could be adding back to your school. So, I think question 3 is where you, in other words, 1 says, what are your issues? 2, what have you done? And 3 is, what are your impacts? I think that's where we can tie in the impacts really nicely.
I'm gonna let you read question 3.
Okay.
Only because I read your answer to this. I like it, but I just want to hear you say some of this stuff.
Okay.
The obvious concern related to the instruction is focused on safety and security. Maslow's hierarchy of needs identifies safety, including security of environment, employment, resources, health, property, etc., as the second tier of a 5-step pyramid above only physiological needs, including air, food, water, sex, sleep, other factors towards homeostasis, etc. If students and staff have safety, security concerns, then naturally education and the attainment of Maslow's higher needs will cease to be a primary concern. Given recent events around the globe and the lack of both safety and security in place, this forces a difficult challenge for both students and staff. Handicapped accessibilities have not denied any student access to programs, but with lacking ADA equipment, especially in the science program, students do not have optimal situations for success. In a time where our district, state, and school are focused on initiatives including student achievement, new teacher evaluations, common core curriculum, differentiated instruction, high-stakes testing, accountability, new scheduling options, technology, and updating policies, lack of security is a problem that is severely limiting the successful attainment of these goals by a current staff and students that are truly concerned about the health and safety of Saugus High School's existing structure. And again, this would also be the place where we could talk about the impact on education, the dollar value.
All of them.
So forget about, you can take all the psychology out of it, but I mean, if we went to a Psych 101 course in college, you know that you do not reach those higher levels of attainment without having, your physiological needs met first, and then your safety you have to feel safe in your environment. So.
I think when the report from SMA comes in, that this is the fields that a lot of that material can be transferred into. Because didn't they say that the safety issue was one of the things they were really going after? The priority one, replacement of structurally unsound, otherwise in a condition seriously jeopardizing.
They said that's something that we certainly should be checking off, as that is a, concern.
So they must have evidence to support that, or...
That was just during the walkthrough, yeah.
That was during
A pre-walkthrough, yeah.
And then the further we go into this document that we handed out tonight, 3 and 7, like I said, are pretty much pulled directly from the last SOI submission. We haven't really done much alteration in those. Again, your feedback is tremendously welcomed. I think, for the most part, the failure for accreditation is kind of what it is. As are the opinions of the administration on the impact on student learning and student programs. I don't think those are going to change. I'm not sure we're bringing any real new things to light in those two areas.
You have, about how many documents do you have from them that are specific to these issues? 2, 3, 4?
As far as what document do you mean?
Any ASC, how many pieces of correspondence have they sent? Is there a binder or?
No,
Because where I'm going with this is that as you have this information, to just put in parentheses, attachment A, attachment B, that will be underneath for the reviewers to see that.
There's 2 letters.
There's 2 letters. So have the reference in there like Greylock did, where they had attachments. And I think we should do that for the first part too, when it comes.
You said NEASC, right?
Right. Do you have in here with the statement where they made, that we used at the end of the history, that said it's unsafe? At the end of the history, do you have that in this section?
I don't believe it. So again, that could probably be, should be in there.
You know the phrase I'm talking about, is one that's right at the end of the history?
There was the quote right from
There was a quote, yeah.
From the NEASC, yep.
I'm just getting a feel for the room that everybody's at the end of their point. I'm not trying to rush this along.
No.
But I mean, we've gone over a lot today.
And I think probably at this point, we're better served with contemplation and review of this, and then just submit your feedback through whatever means. If you want to log right onto Google Docs, I think that's, and I will publicly apologize. I gave everyone the ability to view. I did not know there was a third option, can view, can edit, and also can comment. I thought viewing and commenting went hand in hand, and then Mr. Finn contacted me this morning and said, I'm trying, but it won't let me. And I looked, and there actually is a third option, can comment. So we took care of that for everybody.
So
you see if the
everyone's
chimney
under
picture
comment,
came up?
even
Yes.
because I
Comment or edit.
because I added the 2 that
Yep.
were left off there, those as well?
I can add, I'll send me an email and I'll update those in the morning. The 2 new ones you put on?
Yeah.
I did everything after our meeting.
Okay.
So if it was on for our meeting, I did it.
No,
If
it
it was
was
after
after
that,
that.
then I can, that's only a minor thing. Just send me an email, I'll take care of that in the morning.
And if anyone has a problem, they need to, any information on how to walk through to find the Google Docs, or is everyone familiar with how to get on there to find them? Fine. But if you have any questions, you can call me, you can call the superintendent, of course, just send an email. We have a direction that walk through the process. So
Someone just update Arthur on that? No, on the,
Peter, I'm
It's
not,
not there.
I'm not seeing it. Oh, you know why? Did you get
Refresh.
into the SOI folder?
I put it in the SOI folder,
You did.
so you have to refresh it now.
Looking for?
Well, I uploaded a picture of the chimney that shows the cracks and the report on the chimney. But it's not showing.
Right.
Whose report was that? Which one?
It's right here, Ralph Matarisi. From Boston Chimney and Tower. It was written on December 21st, 2009.
Okay.
And they said $31,000, and here are the pictures of the cracks on the chimney.
No, there's way too much.
It's not there.
I'll see it here. Try it again.
Yeah, I will.
Try it again, we'll catch it next time.
Okay, so for this evening, I guess that's it. Everyone, if you want to read over the documents, if you want to make any comments, you can send them by email or comment through the Google Docs themselves, and we'll be meeting again on Monday evening to work on the rest of it. How's that? Is there any other business this evening?
The
Madam
only
Chair.
comment is if, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You want to go first? Okay. I just wanted to bring up we had come up with a little subcommittee of the walkthrough.
Just a team get
Just a
together
team
to
get
organize it,
together.
yep.
Yes, and we'll be meeting on Friday to start working on the scavenger hunt walkthrough on the 29th, and there's 5 of us, and I guess we want to make a statement because there's 3 school committee members on it. There's Jeannie Meredith, myself, and Ms. Reed. So we just want to make a disclosure that 3 of us will be working together on that, as well as town meeting members Stacy Billingsley and Selectman Paul Allen. So we'll be beginning that and coming up with fun stuff
It is
for the
gonna be fun.
29th. So I just want to let you know.
It's going to be fun and very educational and informative to the public.
Right.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager, did you have
Yeah,
something?
he did.
Excuse me, Mr. Manager.
Did you have something you wanted to?
No, I was going to say, that I think for the next meeting, we can figure out an agenda, but a couple of things, obviously, we'll have a draft report. And, if we can talk about it, but if we want to have someone else come from some of the issues, whether it's Ralph Matarisi or someone else to sort of give their view on the building, we can try to figure that out for next week also. That might be an idea. We might have a lot for next week, but
Maybe in certain areas in the application, there's certain people you think might want to take a look at it or want to comment on it?
even some of the inspectional
Do
service.
that as well,
Yeah.
yeah.
We can figure
Feel
it out.
free to share, if it just, as long as everyone knows, these are draft documents, there's no final yet.
I know I can get it. We can get it.
Is there any other business comments?
Madam Chair, move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned, thank you.